Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the 8-Bit Adventures podcast. This is episode 299. We are rapidly approaching the big 300. I am your host, Sean Hayes, and almost 300 episodes. I have no idea what we're going to do. I want to do something special, but I don't know what to do for our 300th episode. So yeah, this is the 8-Bit Adventures podcast bringing you the latest and greatest gaming news of the past week. And boy, oh boy, do we have some news. A lot of tabletop news this week, actually. And then a couple announcements of things that have released. Not in the notes, but V Rising, for those who have played that game, got its 1.0 release this week. It has been in my Steam library forever. But yeah, it's like a open, not open world, but like a top-down survival builder game. But you play as a vampire, so it's got all sorts of like vampire-related mechanics to it. Also, point of order. I said last week, when talking about Asmodee, that they make innovation. That is Asmodee. Asmodee Games, which may or may not be under Asmodee. So I'm sure with the two names you can understand my misremembering and confusion. But yes, so just a quick clarification from last week. Yeah, that's a weird case of I could have sworn that it was the same company. Definitely not. Yeah, but the names are they're so close. So, I hope everyone's had a great week. And why don't we get into this week's topics? First up, Kobold Press released a reference document for their system, Project Black Flag, published under the Orc license, which I believe stands for Open Role-Playing Content License, or something of that ilk. Orc license was developed in response to the Open Gaming License sort of controversy that happened last January. But yeah, so Black Flag has been in development. It's basically Kobold Press's take on 5th edition, so it's not super different from D&D 5th edition. If any, it's like just making some tweaks to the 5th edition rule set, as opposed to being like a fully brand new, independently developed RPG. But yeah, so system reference document is available for that. And what system reference documents typically do is they're open content to allow third-party creators to use that to then develop materials or their own products or whatever, whether for the game that released the system reference document or for something new entirely. So yeah, that's up on their website. Go check that out. I don't know. We were actually talking about this in my gaming group last night. So it seems like that some folks are hoping that like a bunch of people have like a Paizo Pathfinder jumping off point from the OGL controversy that like 3.5 had when it was moving to 4th. I don't know if we're gonna see that, just because people still like 5th edition. And that they're not like moving to a entirely new rule set. So I don't know if like basically 5e clones are going to make as much headway as Pathfinder did. Um, so, but that said, you know, it's always good to look at, you know, even if they're not entirely new game systems, at what other people are doing, to get ideas, for your own games. One thing I will note, I have heard, so for all the great stuff they do with like monsters and traps and encounter design, I guess traditionally Kobold Press has been not great at doing player options, so maybe temper your expectations. So just something to think about. But that is available now. I believe it's up on Kobold Press's website, so you can check it out for yourself. Next up, Polygon reports that Critical Role is launching its own subscription service, because everybody has to have their own subscription service these days, or streaming service, like subscription streaming service, named Beacon. This service will not only deliver their sort of flagship content, so Critical Role, geez, I can't think of the name, but they have a show that's based on like one of their smaller games. Candela Obscura. That's what it is. I had to talk myself through it. And I think that and like, you know, any of the Exandria like EXU spinoffs, those will still be on Twitch and YouTube, but it would also be available here. And it's intended to be a vehicle for new content. So like new content that they produce will be done on Beacon, it sounds like, instead of Twitch and YouTube. Now, whether that stuff releases later, I don't know. But like it might be like 2 weeks ahead of time on Beacon. But this new content includes the Reslayer's Take, Critical Role Fireside Chat, Critical Role Abridged, and Critical Role Cooldown. So Critical Role Abridged, I think, is I don't recall if it's going to be animated or not, but like basically a way for the like episode recaps or story plot recaps, in like a very condensed visual, you know, video format. Critical Fireside Chat, so basically any of the fireside chats that they've done before, will take place here instead. I think that's typically to talk about like game design stuff and what's coming and things like that. Reslayer's Take is a new sort of campaign, not featuring any of the existing cast, so it's all new people. And it sounded like it was intended to be like more geared toward all ages instead of a mature audience. Critical Role Cooldown is, for those who watch Dimension 20, it's their version of Adventuring Party, where it's them kind of talking and recapping and going over like what happened in the episode directly after the episode wraps. So, yeah, I don't know how I feel about this. It almost feels like people are looking at the success that Dropout's having and going, "Hey, we should do that too." You know, I mean, this also, it does. So one of the things is like it does allow them to get more out of a subscription than on Twitch or YouTube, because then they're not paying for, like, they're not having a cut taken out. Like, they keep more of that. So I can understand it from that regard, but it's yet another like splintering of stuff on the internet. And it's one more service to keep track of. For me personally, I don't know if there's enough offered to warrant me signing up for it. Like I already ditched my Critical Role subscription. Like I haven't watched Campaign 3 in a long time. And like I'm not super interested in Candela Obscura. And since they got rid of like their other shows, there's not really much else, you know. I don't know if like, you know, Ciara Bridged, the Fireside Chats, and you know their version of Adventuring Party is enough for me to warrant, you know, paying $5-6 a month on. Because like, let's make the comparison, because you know, it feels like a comparison is warranted. Like normally, I feel like things are a little, you know, apples and oranges, but in this one, like, let's compare it to Dropout. So Dropout is not just Dimension 20. Like that's the big thing. Is like this feels like if Dropout just had only Dimension 20 content. And like there's so much more that Dropout offers. Like with Game Changer, actually Make Some Noise, Very Important People, Dirty Laundry, trying to think. Oh, I know there's other stuff. Smarty Pants, Breaking News. So like it's got a wide variety of content. Like they're not just banking everything on Dimension 20. Which is smart. Cuz, you know, like at some point, you know, people are going to want to work on other projects, you know. So yeah, you know, I think you just really have to be a super fan and just consume everything that Critical Role does for this to be worth it. And that said, I don't know if the $6, like, if you're a subscriber on Twitch, like, then maybe, like, you cancel your subscription and sign up for this instead. But I don't know. It's not providing enough value for me. Like, if they brought back like all work no play, you know, and did some version of like the Yeehaw Game Ranch, you know, and other and like a lot of the other content, maybe. Like, and I think that's the thing, is like they need to offer other content on there that's not just you know, ancillary content to the main show. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I mean, launching a streaming service is a huge investment. So yeah, we'll have to see what comes of that. Next up, Wizards of the Coast announced that the upcoming 2024 core rulebooks, because whatever the next iteration of Dungeons and Dragons, like doesn't have a name. Like they dropped one D&D, and so now there is no like official moniker for it. But so the core rulebooks that are coming, which are just like a rules refresh and kind of repackaging the existing content, will add like the new stuff that's coming in to a new copy of the D&D system reference document. So like this is going to get a little technical for those who aren't like super into tabletop games. But so the system reference document was at the center of the open gaming license controversy. And the open gaming license itself. So currently what is out there is what is known as System Reference Document 5.1. So that denotes it's like if you were going to say like a patch or something, it's like patch 5.1, you know, the 5 being for 5th edition. And this is like the basic rules that you can use to produce your own Dungeons and Dragons content, or use that to create some other game, like a non-Dungeons and Dragons game, but like that uses D&D as a framework. So 5.1 is protected under Creative Commons 4.0. This will be, they're going to make a copy of it, essentially. Like, instead of modifying 5.1, they're going to leave 5.1 intact under Creative Commons, and then this one will be a separate 5.2 system reference document that they say when those changes are done will also be published under Creative Commons. So they're not going to do this until all of the core rulebooks are out, which will be in 2025, like Q1 2025. But once those are all out, they're going to put all those changes, put them into SRD 5.2, and publish that under Creative Commons 4.0. Now, nothing is like, they didn't exactly write a contract with the audience, so we'll see if that actually happens. I would like to think, with the absolute beating that they took with the first controversy, that they wouldn't have the density, we'll say, to put it politely, to announce that they're going to make the changes under Creative Commons and then not do it. My hope would be that they're somewhat intelligent enough to then follow through on that statement. Especially considering I'm shocked. Like, I'm surprised that they are going to do this in the first place. Like, it was seen as a big win to get SRD 5.1 under Creative Commons. But the fact that, like, they're at least publicly expressing interest in pursuing that model going forward, perhaps as a show of goodwill, so that they don't burn any more of their audience, I think is a pretty big deal. I think. So that's super exciting. From a game design and development standpoint. So yeah. The last core rulebook to release will be the Monster Manual, which is sometime in Q1 2025. Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide, I believe, are slated for this fall. And I think Player's Handbook is September or October, and the Dungeon Master's Guide is November or December. So once Monster Manual comes out, they'll push those changes to SRD 5.2, release it under Creative Commons, and then, this will only be a big deal. I should stipulate, if the new rules are received well. And the beauty of it is, if they're not, SRD 5.1 still exists. So yeah. And then they also kind of made an offhand comment of, once that's out, they will be taking a look at the SRDs of prior D&D editions. I guess would be namely 3rd and 4th edition, and potentially releasing those under Creative Commons. For me, getting the D&D 4th edition SRD released under Creative Commons is an even bigger deal than these recent ones, because 4th edition wasn't covered under the Open Gaming license. So, like, you could conceivably still make content, licensed content for 3rd edition if you really wanted to. You can't do that for 4th edition, because it had a separate license that was really terrible for third-party publishers. So yeah. So if that happens, that's huge. Absolutely huge. uh because in particular, a lot of the problems that people have with 5th edition were solved with 4th edition. But because it had a different structure for everything, and because it read like a technical manual instead of, flowery prose and everything that like they put back into 5e, uh people hated it. So yeah. So next up. Ooh, don't want to do that. Nope. Not pushing buttons. There we go. Hades 2. Early access has come. Hades 2 is now available on Steam. In early access, so you can get it now. It is $30. Not bad, especially considering users who have played the game thus far reported that it is surprisingly fleshed out and feature complete for an early access title. One of the things that is missing is the true ending. So, if you're looking for a true ending to the story, it's not implemented yet. Supposedly the devs have said they don't know what it will be because they haven't made it yet. But yeah, that apparently it's more fleshed out than apparently some third, AAA titles are upon full release. So big win for Supergiant, I think. I'm excited. This may be, I did pick it up. I haven't played it yet. But I have Hades on the Switch. But I decided, I do want to, I'm okay with supporting Supergiant for this in early access. Like, I've been kind of leery about early access titles lately. Just some of them, it just goes on too long. Or they don't end up delivering. Like, there's been a couple that I followed that like they just never finish. Or they've been abandoned. So I am a bit more selective and kind of only do early access titles where it's either super cheap, so I don't mind, if basically like Kickstarter, like if the project never comes to fruition, like I'm only out $10. Or games that are by developers that already have a good proven track record. So like Baldur's Gate 3. When Baldur's Gate 3 was announced and went into early access, I was all in. Larian's got a good track record. I'm okay with that. Supergiant's got a great track record. I'm okay with this. So yeah. Great example of a game that went into early access that I was like, don't know how this is gonna go, but it's cheap and I'm okay with supporting it, like Vampire Survivors. Which is still criminally undercharging people. But I guess if the devs are making money and able to make do, then good on them. So yeah. So if you enjoyed the first game and you're looking for, you don't mind playing early access titles, you've got you got space on your hard drive for it, pick it up on Steam. Now. Do it now. All right. Speaking of sequels, Helldivers 2. Oh boy. PCGamer. This has been a wild roller coaster of a story, folks. This week. Initially reported, so there was some sort of bug where I guess it was always intended that you would have to sign into PSN in order to play this game. There was a bug that there was something with it not working, so it wasn't implemented. And So I don't know how many weeks it's been live. Like it's been live, since release. I guess they finally fixed the bug, and Sony pushed for that to happen, despite the devs protesting it. Like the development team was saying, like this is not going to help the game at all. We should not do this. Sony pushed it and made it happen. And then doing so caused it to get pulled from 177 countries because they don't have PSN or they don't have access to PSN. And then users proceeded to then review bomb the game on Steam, including changing their previously done reviews to absolutely tank the rating. And it worked. It happened. And then basically Sony caved. This is a case where it actually works. And became a huge meme. And it's bad when the development team, like if you're a publisher and the development studio that you're working with proceeds to then make memes making fun of you about it. Like putting out memes, basically like thanking players, and then saying like, hey, guess what? Job's done, mission accomplished, and now let's go get those reviews back in. Or and then like there's a cape now available in the game that has the like the trend of reviews. So like it starts like positive, really positive, and then just like mixed, like with just an absolute like catastrophic downfall, and then going back up to slightly positive again. So yeah, publishers, don't push bad decisions on your dev teams. Because generally speaking, the public will get you. And yeah, and it's good that this kind of has this roller coaster of a story had a bit of a happy ending, because there's been plenty of times when like the publisher wouldn't cave on it, and then the game just sinks and it's done. So like it was like at like 9 p.m. that the decision was made. Like it was happening like in real time, because like I had already gotten news articles. So how I do this is I find like news articles at night and then like post them to post for the next day, on social media. And it was, I had grabbed news articles which had talked about basically like people review bombing and like the decision and like Sony pushing it. And in the time between me grabbing that news article and it getting posted the following morning, was Sony had reversed the decision. So now I had to like change a bunch of stuff that I had posted to reflect that, like, guess what? Mission accomplished. You got it all worked, and this is being rescinded. Like I just can't imagine, like, in what world would you push something? Like, would you push a feature that wasn't part of the game, like even though if it was originally intended to be part of the game, wasn't part of the game, and it not being in the game contributed to its huge success? You would push that to not only destroy goodwill, but then also get your game pulled from the stores of 177 countries. That's just wild to me. Like that, man. That's an example of like just corporations being out of touch completely. So, yeah, thankfully Sony caved. Next up, speaking of corporations being out of touch, TheVerge reports that Shuttering, Arkane Austin, Tango Gameworks, and Alpha Dog Games won't be enough for Microsoft, and that more layoffs are expected. So this is also following the layoff of, what did I read, like 1,900 people from Activision Blizzard, like, or that included Activision Blizzard. There's a lot of layoffs going on. It seems like it is wild how Microsoft seems to be following the Embracer model of like, oh no, we bought too many things, and they're not returning on the investment, and now we have to close them. Like, and this is already coming off of the reputation that Microsoft has no idea what it's doing in the gaming space. So yeah, this is not a good look at all. And just kind of continues the trend of, like, because it's not just like what is considered quote unquote the typical layoffs of after a project, which is still bad, mind you. Like, you know, it's, and I don't know of a solution for it. Like, I don't know if, you know, developers need to start, you know, working like Hollywood does. I don't know if the video game industry needs to start working like Hollywood does. And for those of you who don't know what the difference might be, it's nearly everything in Hollywood is unionized. So, you know, to have like a developers union that's not just at a single company, by the way, like it would be an industry-wide union that all developers are part of. You know, and I don't know. I don't know if I don't know how to fix things, but because yeah, the way movies work is quite a bit different than the development of a game. So, despite the fact that it has a lot of like analogous features and structure to it. So, yeah. I mean, this is also just weird because Tango Gameworks made Hi-Fi Rush, which was being touted as like a fantastic game that is an example of what Xbox needs. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it kind of just like Xbox right now is kind of just the joke of like the console space. You know, it seems like they just want to push everything to Game Pass. But like they aren't getting new users to Game Pass. And like that's the whole point of doing a lot of this stuff is to like try and continue growing Xbox Game Pass. And it's not happening. So I think we're seeing sort of the snake eating its own tail here of reaching market saturation and then corporations not knowing what to do about it. So yeah. That's it's all terrible. So sorry to end things on a really sour note, I guess, but yeah, it's because I do topics alphabetically. That's just how it worked out. So, well then, hopefully we've got some more fun news next week. But that is going to wrap things up for this week, for this episode. Thank you all for joining me. Be sure to tune in next week for episode 300. And if you want to check out more stuff from 8-Bit Adventures, you can go to our website, 8bitadventures.com. It's currently under a little bit of renovation. Like the site's live, but I am in the process of phasing out my longtime comics plugin And doing so means I have to manually port over all the comics that I've done over like the past, oh god, almost 20 years, 15 years, over the past 15 years. So that's a big project, and I got to do it manually. So if things look a little wonky, don't worry about it. But it is to eventually like make the site more secure because Comics plugin isn't currently supported anymore. But you can find comics content, my portfolio of artwork. You can find links to all the podcasts and other related stuff there. If you'd like to help support that content, the best way to do that is to become a patron at patreon.com/8bitadventures. Patrons can get benefits for as little as $1 a month. It's unlike other Patreon platforms. I do not charge by how often I post or how many things I post. It is you pay a monthly rate, and it's however much you get. So at the very least, it's been, all the podcasts, trying to get back to posting comics, and also looking to revamp the reward structure a little bit, and have a lot better rewards for patrons currently. So currently working on that. But yeah. Or you can also subscribe on Twitch, twitch.tv/8bitadventures. Big shout out and thank you to all current subscribers and patrons. Thank you for your continued support. And finally, our opening theme is One Up by Professor Shy Guy. You can find his stuff over at professorshyguy.bandcamp.com. And with that, we're done. So, as always, have fun, happy gaming, and enjoy your pie cake.